Hello, and welcome to the stream. I'm TheBlueShifting, and I'm glad to have you here. So we're doing the rap party. This is a kind of a tradition on the channel based off of an old thing I used to do when I used to work on school newspapers, which is essentially the get-together where we kind of do all the finalization before we put something to rest, or in that case, to publication. So welcome. I will be watching the chat actively, and I'll be responding, and I'll answer direct questions as we go. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of go through this as I feel is most important. Going to cover all the basics I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about the characters. Going to talk about my favorite points, any issues I have, and then to wrap things up, we got two things at the end. First of all, of course, I have to say and announce at the end who's going to be best girl, who I think best girl is overall after I've gone over everything. And I also will be doing the announcement of the next series we'll be covering on the Friday slot, thanks to the votes of the patrons. So thank you all, patron supporters. And so let's just jump right into it. First of all, I have to say, again, when I chose this game, most of the time, the selection we make on Fridays, the Fan Spotlight Fridays, which is essentially the guaranteed slot of content that I gift to the patrons. They always get the first and only real say in the Friday slot, but I also specifically target my Fridays to be games that I am gifted and games that I am encouraged or contacted by developers in order to play. Normally, this has had the intention of covering games that I might normally not come across. Maybe a brand new release from a new developer, maybe a lesser known title. Something that kind of comes across the plate that just might get just a cursory look, but might get overlooked by a lot of us, including myself. So that's what this Friday slots are supposed to be for. The trouble is, I don't spoil myself at all. So when this came into my email a while ago, I'm talking probably over a year ago, with the title saying hey, this is a game, if you want, here's the key, if you want to cover it on your channel, we'd love to have it for you. I don't know, maybe I've heard this game wasn't as well received as other games from Ubisoft, so maybe that was why they reached out to a creator like me that's definitely not the largest and said, hey, we'd like you to cover the game if you're interested. But because I didn't look into it at all, I slotted it in with all the others that I'd been given from a lot of smaller, lesser known developers. So it got voted on, selected, and I started playing it, and it quickly realized, as you probably saw in my first episode, that this is a much better, much more established company. And now that I've realized the company, I follow them on social media and everything, I'm a lot more familiar with their work because of this game. That's not going to happen again with a Ubisoft title, so I'm sorry, but this is future games from this company, this publisher, developers, we're gonna have to look to get slotted into the Wednesday or Monday slots. I'd love to play more games like this. I think the game itself was developed wonderfully. I gotta say, maybe the first thing we have to cover before we really get into anything else is just the perfect user interface. It's a weird thing to bring up in any game, but I do think that user interface inherently is so important and critical for just the way you interact with a game. And when it comes to like a story-driven game, that's very important. So to have all the features, like seriously, so many features, being able to skip to choices, being able to just do skips by chapter, the loading line that would kind of let you know when a voice line is over, so you don't accidentally click too quickly, like I am super notorious to do. Thank you so much, especially Fata Morgana. I'm so bad at that. Just so friendly for someone who's digesting this material, especially for someone like me who wants to make sure we get every nook and cranny of it. It was fantastic. I'm blown away, and I wish I could somehow get my hands on their program, but I know they wouldn't do that because it's kind of the bread and butter. Super, super well done. Also, fantastic artwork. My goodness, like I think like just the slideshow alone, I get blown away by the stills that were in this game. Each and every one of them was so fantastic and well done, and so well like interactable. It's right on par with some of the greater visual novels I've read and consumed. So like, again, I had no idea what I was getting into when I started it, but it was a joy to go through. I'm really grateful for those of you who voted for it and introduced me to this world, because again, like while I'm a channel that's so heavily focused on visual novels, the fact that I'm so blind to so many of them, it's kind of the greatest curse, but also my greatest blessing, because I get to experience all of these ones that are very classic and ones that are very common and very well known in the community through fresh eyes, because I've literally ended up recording almost every visual novel I've experienced, which is really cool. So again, thank you. I'm grateful for that. So that the UI is just so impactful, I have to at least mention it. Now, I'm going to go over the stories and characters kind of one at a time, starting with the one that I started with that you're all familiar with, Hazuki. And then I'm going to go through the order that I completed them in, and there's a bit of a story to that, but I'll get to that after I finish the Hazuki route, because Hazuki obviously was the route that I naturally got to. When I play these games, sometimes I might try and angle myself towards a character, and I really was enjoying Hazuki from the get-go, so it kind of made sense that I was able to like get to her story, because I had a vested interest from the beginning, just because I thought her character was very cute, both in looks and also her mannerisms. I also saw a lot of like myself in Hazuki, so which is something I definitely talked about a lot in the game itself as I was covering it. So I don't want to beat that horse too dead. But obviously, when I went through the Hazuki route, I really enjoyed myself, and I was able to get to it, and it was really quite a good experience. Frankly, from what I've seen, I'm actually really glad I started with Hazuki. Not everyone was excited because it meant that I wasn't showcasing what a lot of people's favorites are, and I definitely know what you're talking about now, but I also still think that a Hazuki route or a Nanami route is the best for featuring on a playthrough like my channel, because of the type of content and the stories they tell, and because I think that the other stories I think are so impactful for somebody to explore on their own, because the Ayase and Mayu stories are so intrinsically linked. I think it would have been a disservice if I had actually ended up on one of their routes, because there would have left so many questions. It would have been almost torturous for somebody, but at the same time, maybe that would have continued to help motivate people to play. But needless to say, there's a lot of good material here, so like watching and this series, like I hope inspires you to support the developers and buy the game for yourself if you haven't for some reason. I'm also going to say now, I should have been clear from the beginning, but this is a spoiler conversation. I'm starting with Hazuki, so if you've watched the series, obviously you're not going to get any specific spoilers. But if you haven't played this game, if you haven't watched the series for some reason, and like you're here, I would click away, go to another video. It's time to go and digest this game on its own properly. And I specifically, I recommend you play the game yourself if you haven't. Just getting that out there. It's absolutely worth it. So let's do that. But let's jump into Hazuki's route in particular. I think Hazuki's route really pulled the heartstrings for me a lot. I'm always brought into a narrative where the bond between a child and parent is really important and established. I don't know, it always hits me really hard because whilst I can't say I have the greatest relationship with my parents, I do think that like the influence and choices my parents made while raising me impacted tremendously the way I see the world. and a lot of it in positive ways. No parents are perfect, and mine are far from it. But like Hazuki, I gleaned a lot of important life lessons that helped me decide who I wanted to be. I didn't have morals shoved in my face, and in fact, I was encouraged to make my own decisions very independently and very like heavily supported. Like a great example of it is the fact that I never drank growing up, and I never really was like drawn to it. But I think a part of that too was because the allure was never there for me. I mean, my dad drunk, and I wasn't a huge fan of like the kind of person he would behave like when he was drunk. Thankfully, he wasn't like abusive or anything. He just got very, you know, like it was not. I just didn't like how it kind of took your inhibitions, and I just never liked that because I knew that like he would wake up in the morning regretting things that he'd said or how he felt at the hangovers. And then you add to the fact that I had such supportive parents about this. Like my mom, I remember when I was 16, she sat me down one night and she's like, "Hey, so I know that you're gonna have friends that are gonna drink and like invite you out drinking. Like it's just gonna happen. So here's the deal I want to make with you. If you want to try drinking, and like if you and your friends want to drink, I want you to tell me, and we're gonna plan out a night on the weekend, like a Saturday night. You're going to come here with all your friends. I'm going to go out, get you drinks, and you're going to drink here at home. And you're going to stay the night, and no one's going to drive or do anything stupid." Like, she's like, "Look, like, technically it's not allowed, but I'd rather you, if you're going to go for that experience, do it in a controlled manner where you're not going to do anything stupid and do anything to risk you and your friends' lives, and just enjoy yourselves and, you know, like, have that experience." And that, for me, was really impactful and important, because it showed a level of trust and a desire for me to be safe above all else. She obviously would prefer if I didn't drink before I was like 21, because that's the drinking age in the United States. But she wanted to meet me halfway because she had that level of trust and that desire to make sure that I stayed safe when I was like, if I was like doing something like that. And the funny thing is, I never ever wanted to. Like, it was just never something I was that interested in. But that level of like trust was really important to me, and I think that Hazuki got that same level of trust from her parents, and it kind of helped shape her just like it shaped me into somebody who just has this natural tendency to consider other people and their points of view. Now Hazuki's a bit more like, you know, strict rules than I am, but there's still that power level similarity, and so the story was really impactful for me, and I was really interested in seeing where her development was going to go. I was pleasantly surprised by her. I kind of called a little early on how the main conflict was going to be the trust between Hazuki and Satoru, and the kind of polar directions that their like initial learned morals and like guiding points of life were like how they were incongruent with like what their relationship started to turn into. Seeing the writing for Hazuki's pain during that moment, the schism moments, was really impactful for me, because I really felt it, and I also was heartbroken just because, from Satoru's perspective, he kind of was put into a corner and he didn't have a choice. He did what he like knew he had to do, but like it also like he kind of like knew. Like, he felt bad about like how his choices were affecting and taking advantage of her, and so when it came out, he didn't even resist. He didn't even fight back. He's just like, "All right, you got me. I'll accept whatever the punishment is." And I think I would totally have been the same. So it was just a really relatable experience for me, and definitely something that got me pretty like emotional at the time, which was just really cool. Like anytime, like I always get super immersed into these stories, like far more than I think any reasonable person should. I really get myself immersed, and so it's not surprising that I got so caught up in the story and got so like emotional from it. But it did, like, I walked away, and the week between like recording, it was something that was on my mind. And anytime a VN does that, like that's a sign of something really well written, because it makes these characters so approachable, so realistic. And like any good characters, like character design number like 101, I think, for visual novels, that I think is the biggest mistake that smaller developers and smaller, like younger writers do, is falling into the trap of tropes. The idea that like you need to have the tsundere, the kudere, you need to have like the dere, you need to have these cubbies for characters that, you know, check boxes for fans. And that's not right, because this game is one of the ones that's done it right. I think Muv-Luv did it beautifully. Steins Gate did it amazingly. And what it is it's taking characters that fit into these like criteria at first. Like they're the first impressions you get of characters. But then you get to know the character and you get to know so much more about them. That there's levels of motivation that help explain why they behave the way they are. Not like, oh, they behave like this because this. It's more of like, oh, this contributed to why they might be having this type of personality. And also that when they get to know the character, that the behavior changes as they get to know the main character that you are represented as the game. That your relationship with them changes the way they interact with you, not just physically, but in emotional ways. And Hazuki was really, really plain to see, where she was super, super straight-laced, but then she learned and taught herself to bend the rules, like, because at first she saw, well, like, I'm really good, so it's okay if I make this exception. And she slowly started to see that the world isn't as black and white as she kind of had hoped it would be, and that morphing of a thought was able to be accomplished without her, like she had to challenge her own way of thinking, but not without destroying her way of thinking. And at the end, Hazuki became like a better version of the Hazuki that we got to see at the beginning. So she had a narrative journey, which I think is one of the things that sometimes doesn't get portrayed enough in games, is that the dating routes, because it's inherently complex to have a branching narrative, it can be easy to have girls just be a certain way and that's who they are, and it's like up to you as the main character to decide if you like them or not, rather than what we see here, which is one of my favorite types of games, where it's not just about like getting the girl and starting to date. It's about you begin your relationship, and then you have to experience that relationship and the ups and downs that come with that, and like understanding how like your choices, interactions interfere or like mingle with others that you interact with, and how that the impact, and then also like facing challenges in relationships. It's just such a good thing to see in these games. So Hazuki's route was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Now moving on to the second route that I played and finished, because here's the thing. The first route I played like after I kind of did all of them simultaneously, except for the bonus route, which we'll talk about last. Basically what happened is, once I got to the point where I was feeling comfortable that I was about halfway through the Hazuki route, I started all the other routes pretty much like I started Ayase and then Mayu, then Nanami, and I kind of caught them up a little behind where I was in like the relative like chapter numbering and like spacing, because like all the routes have a very similar pattern to them, based in like the relationship development. So I kind of use those as guiding posts, and kind of caught them all up simultaneously. And so I wouldn't overtake the Hazuki route just in case there were some overlapping themes, and then finish them through. But as I got into like the third, like the beginning of the climax of the story, I stopped, because when I was trying to figure out how to get to the final like narrative ending, I was confused why I couldn't unlock it based on, and so I looked at a spoiler-free like route guide, and it had a subtle recommendation saying save Ayase's story for last. It didn't clarify any specific reasons why. It just said that a lot of people who read the game think it's best to save hers for last, and I said, okay, then I'm going to do that. And thank goodness I did. Oh my goodness, that was a really good thing to say for people. So I'm really grateful for that advice. So the second one I ended up finishing, oddly, was Nanami's, which, you know, the sister. That was the one I was the most resistant to, because I was like kind of off, like, I don't know, it's that whole like stepbrother stuff you see. It's like, you know, are we down in Alabama? Like, it gets a little sketchy. Like, yeah, they're not blood related, so technically it's okay, but it's also like it's really pushing that limit. So I was like, I just don't see myself in those shoes. But I wanted to complete the game, so I went down the route. And I enjoyed the Nanami route. Nanami's route was actually rather fun and dynamic and a lot more interesting than I expected it to be. I thought that it was really interesting how they brought the story around for Nanami, where it talked a lot about her upbringing and about how she had grown as a character. That was my favorite part of her storyline, was just how shattered her life had been beforehand. Again, really highlighting this idea that, like, yeah, they have these superpowers, but like these superpowers were a lot more of a burden than a boon in a lot of ways. In a ways that made sense, but were also still like different enough. The way that they often exploited and used for profit or manipulation on behalf of their parents, like parents who have these children whom they can manipulate so effectively. And Nanami's story about like being separated from her family and then being adopted and having to adjust to like a loving household that like she just couldn't understand, because fundamentally she had been so like she'd been misappropriated essentially. Her childhood had been hijacked by her parents, and so to see that journey, it makes a lot more sense why she would become emotionally invested in her brother more than would be expected of a typical sibling relationship, because he was like her gateway into like what it meant to have a real life. And so like it made sense for how it went out. One of the odd things was the fact that Chisaki, you know, her best friend, like when she had the heart-to-heart with Nanami in her storyline, and Chisaki was like, come on, like let it out, like I know you want to stay, and they finally got her to confess that she loved her brother. Chisaki's like, I support you, you guys are great, I think it'll be really fun. And then like Nanami's like, yeah, well, it's not like it's illegal, it's just weird that like we're brother and sister, but like we're not related. And Chisaki was like, oh, you're not related, oh, that makes it even better. I was like, wait a second, Chisaki, you were 100% behind this when you thought they were blood related? That's a little sketch. But hey, you know what, supportive friends are supportive friends, I suppose. But Nanami's I think her story was really good. I think she was the sweetest one. I think watching her go through the emotions of like the power dynamic, I guess you could say, of like having a brother whom you love and then a boyfriend whom you love, and what the differences are there, and that genuine concern for her brother. She also had a slightly bit of a sadistic streak, which it was just the kind of sadistic I can kind of get behind. Like the kind that I find actually very appealing. Like I'm definitely not someone who goes the full sadist, masochist route per se, but I do think a girl who has some like drive, both in their personal life and in their private, like intimate life, is very attractive. I think someone who's willing to like take control of situations is something that I find very appealing. So I found that very strong for her, but I still can't get over the sister thing. So, like, whilst there were a lot of things I liked about the Nanami route, which we'll talk a little bit about more when I kind of break down like my like favorite points and negatives. I think there were a lot of great points for the Nanami route, and Nanami as a character is fantastic. Her character is so fun, but it's just got that factor, if that makes any sense. By the way, thank you for joining me in the chat. I see some of you have jumped in. Remember, I'll see your comments if you make a comment in the live chat. So like if you wanted to shout something out or ask a question, please make sure you do. Anyway, I also will look at the comments afterwards, but sadly, comments of a live stream post live stream don't get flagged as much to me in the apps and like the browser that I use. So just keep that in mind. But thank you so much for joining me. Anyway, so Nanami's route was really, really impactful. Narratively, it was the weakest. I think it had the least impact. Well, not of all the endings, but of all the dateable routes. The story was very low impact. It was really heavily focused on the characters, which was good, but it also makes it less memorable because it feels a lot more carnal than the others, which is fine, but it definitely was a bit compared to some of the other routes, it really was kind of left in the dust and had very little like actual, I guess the word I'm looking for is there was no real confrontations that had to be made between the characters. They knew each other so well. They were related. They lived together. They knew each other inside out, literally by the end. Anyway, but because of that, it was difficult, I think, for writers to come up with a true like relationship hurdle they had to overcome. There really wasn't one. Like there was a little bit, but it was like, oh, like you misinterpreted like what I was comfortable with and so I got mad and made a bunch of delicious food for you. It's like, is that really a confrontation? It's like a tiny like spat. I don't know. I think they're like, it was fine. It was well written enough, but it was the weakest of the stories. So loses points for that. Then I finished the Mayu route, which was really interesting. Mayu's route was really fascinating because it's really essentially like, it's funny because like they don't say it till the very end, and I hadn't really thought of it this way, but at the end I kind of pointed out that it's like, oh yeah, that's the childhood friend arc essentially, and I was like, oh okay, yeah, which is great because again, like tropes can be your worst enemy, but they can also be your best friend because we all like the tropes, but we also have like seen them so often. So the best friend come around to be your romantic partner trope is super overdone. It is really fun because there's something really sweet about it. I mean, I even like dreamed of it. My first like real serious girlfriend was almost a childhood friend kind of story because we'd gone to the same elementary school and had actually like when we were young, it was like I actually had like the real childhood story issue with that because we had played on the playground because we were a grade apart. So like I was in like when we met, I was in 4th grade, she was in 3rd grade. And we'd actually played on the playground some activities sometimes. Like just sometimes our friend groups ended up like doing stuff together kind of randomly. And she remembered that. She actually remembered like those interactions with me and remembered like some of the like the kind things I'd done for her. And so like when we'd met in high school, she specifically like she mentioned like down the line about these like times that we'd spent together and like times we'd known each other. And I, being the typical MC of my life, had no clue what she was talking about. I was like, what? Oh, I kind of remember that now that you mentioned it, but I'm not quite sure. Like, I was like, it's so funny because like we think of these tropes as being tropes, but like there's some real truth there, honestly. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just really dumb being like a real life dumb main character, but it's true. So, anyway, long story short, I ended up with like dating that girl, and like the Mayu route, it's like there's a lot of groundwork that was there, but because of the gap between it, like you still also got to have the exploration of each other's characters and narratives that Nanami's route missed. I do think it's odd that the route they took for the first like intimate like encounter, like there's kind of like there during the main storyline there were like about 3 like intimate encounters that happened through the main plot, and then like there's a two bonus ones that you had in the after story for each character except for the last character. But her first one was a solo experience with Satoru like hiding in her room, not realizing that he was there. It was very interesting that they took that approach. I mean, narratively it made sense, but I feel like it could have been a bit better done and feel less predatory, I guess. I don't know. It just made me uncomfortable. Where like normally the intimate scenes in the full game, which by the way, I did see all the intimacy from the full game experience. I obviously couldn't show those on YouTube, but I feel like it was one of the ones that was a bit less tasteful. Not the worst one. I'll talk about the least tasteful in the future, but I thought that was an odd choice to make, I think. Also, like, while I like Mayu as a character, she's definitely interesting. She's got that sexy scientist thing going for her, for sure. But I found her the least appealing character for me personally, her personality-wise. Because she was so... Like, I loved the nerdy side of her. Like, that was fantastic. I really wasn't down for the very, like, over-the-top, touchy-feely. I guess for me, that would be it's just a bit much. Like, I don't have no problem with intimacy and physical, like, contact, but she kind of takes it to the nth degree. And, I don't know, it was like... It was almost roll your eyes type of moments for me sometimes, which was, yeah, it's just a personal taste thing, but for me, it just wasn't the best. Her character design's fantastic, and like the artwork depicted for her story is really, really good. Now we gotta talk about the story. Now she is kind of 2 parts. Her and ISA's story are kind of tied together, which is why I'm glad I got to theirs last. So she ended up being friends with a girl whose powers go berserk. Shito, I don't know. She's hidden from like the wiki that I used to kind of revamp and make sure I could spell the names right for my notes. So I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but She is really impactful because she's kind of this herald of destruction and potential doom for all like Astrals, because if the public finds out that Astrals can completely go bananas and lose all control, like it could completely like destroy this approach of trying to convince people that Astrals are good for society and that they're not going to be super extra dangerous. It was a really touching story. I also thought it was really interesting because with the Mayu catching Satoru, unlike Hazuki, who like her dilemma was ultimately a moral dilemma with Satoru, Mayu's story was like a direct, like, she could have lost her job kind of problem. Like, I thought that was really interesting dynamic where like she and her livelihood and her lifestyle was as much on the line as Satoru's. Like, they both had a lot to lose and a lot to gain from their relationship. And so seeing that dynamic was really, really, really interesting. I think it was one of the better written stories for that reason, because the interpersonal relationship and like what was at stake was so up there and so like impactful for both their lives. And so their relationship felt a lot more like a give and take in every respect. So I highly respect that. I think, again, I just found her personality the most grating for me. Just the way she chose to talk about things and the way she like rationalized things. It was like she would come across sometimes a little obnoxious and just not my cup of tea. So I just didn't find her as appealing as some of the other girls, but that's me. That's my point of view, and I'm allowed to like I'm sure some people are going to be like wanting to burn me at the stake for that opinion, but it's what it is. Like, she was probably my least favorite of all the routes, and that's okay. Like, that's the thing, is like there was still so much merit to her storyline, to her character development, and to like I really enjoyed the way they worked with the science of Astrals and how Satoru became kind of the key to help like prevent the frenzied state. I liked that approach and like how they worked with like the mechanics of the world and really kind of pursued a route that was very unexpected. Was really, really well done. That was probably one of the peak writing points for her story, which is why I really liked it. Because I was like really impressed with the fact that I didn't really see the solution coming until it was like presented. But then once it was presented, it made a lot of sense, which is just a great narrative. Like, sometimes these sci-fi stories can kind of just go mumbo jumbo, Deus Ex Machina, fix the problem. But instead, they took the time to kind of immerse the world, the setting, and the technology, so that when the time came for that technology to be applied to the solution, I was right on board and understood exactly what was happening. That's a sign, again, of very good writing. Now we'll go to ISA. A lot of people in the comments were super big ISA stans, and I get it. ISA's story was freaking fantastic. We'll talk a bit more about it later, about like why it was probably the top tier, but it was absolutely the top tier story. ISA as a character is really good, because the fact that she has the double life going that complements Satoru's double life so well, but in such a dynamic way, was really fun. She definitely cracked me up the most. Her interactions, especially when she'd like go like kind of snarky or even like a touch of yandere, like, or essentially like psychopath. Like, I felt like she was a little over the top, like, but it was an entertaining over the top, so I didn't really mind it too much. That said, I personally don't think I would see myself as a ISA like dateable character because of that. Like, if she weren't so prone to like violence and shrieking and like trying to throw you under the bus on any like first opportunity, like, I would find that very frustrating as a person. But what she makes up for with it are also some of the best dates in the game. Absolutely some of the best story interactions that are there, and also some of the most realistic. I think her flying off the handle and being super angry at like the drop of a hat was not super realistic, but when it came to her like more personable interactions with Satoru, like post fair, when you're actually like on her route, she became a lot better, and it was a lot more fun to interact with her then, and I really, really enjoyed it. I also think that like just like with Mayu, where Satoru and Mayu's, like I said, that like a big strength was the fact that they both had a lot to lose in their relationship. Ayase's relationship was a bit of like the other side of that coin, where they all both had a lot to gain. Because unlike all the other girls, Ayase and he had the best understanding between the two of them, that they were fundamentally facing similar problems. They had a lot of different application, but being able to have that bonding where they both had like dramatic, deep secrets they couldn't tell about each other, such a foundation for a really good relationship. And I can see why she would be like the poster girl. Like if this were made to an anime, like I believe she would be the romance route that the anime would take. Just because like it's the way it's presented, but also it's just like it makes the most sense, honestly, just because of the way the characters interact and the way that their stories align. And I did find that very appealing and also just well written. The twist in that story floored me. Like I was gasping. I was like doing my like shouting at the characters, like, which I do, by the way. Like you see me reacting in these games. Like one of the funny things about it is the fact that that's how I play these games normally. I mute myself a lot when I'm home, like by myself, because I don't want to disturb people. But when I'm recording, you're getting my honest opinion. And that's the thing, is like I still talk to the characters when I'm playing by myself. I still gasp and react because that's just who I am when I play these games. You get the real me when you see these videos. It's just, that's part of why I made these videos, because it was already so natural for me. I was just like, fetch, I just want to record this because I enjoy it. I want to share this with people because I wish I had people around me to share this with, because I love it so much. And so like I get to share with you. But her story, like I was like floored. I had to like do a lap around the room at one point, and that was because, again, we're heavy spoilers here, obviously. So like it was such a cool reveal to the homeroom teacher being the villain the whole time, like the agent that was like snuck onto the base. Like I think it's impressive that she was able to infiltrate so well and didn't break her covers for so long. But it made a heck of a twist. And like when she like pulled Satoru into like the lab and like gave him like the papers that she'd written, and he was like reading through it. I remember I was reading the information with him, and I was like, holy crap, this explains a lot. Like, wow, this is really detailed. And then my red flag started going off. I was like, this seems a little too specific. Why is this like the perfect thing that's like right in line with exactly the question Satoru was asking? And I was like, not only that, it also is like giving us the answers to what happened here. And then it got to the end, and I was like, it was getting to the end. I was like, she's a traitor, isn't she? And then like Satoru like kind of came to that same conclusion as me just shortly afterwards. And then she like jabbed him, and I was just like, holy crap, no way. And I was like, super well done though. Like it was so well written, and especially because I didn't see it coming. And again, this is why Ayase's route being last is so good, because she's a part of like every other route. But she just seems like a normal character through all of them. If I'd seen Ayase's route first, I would have been like, you, every time afterwards. But like being able to have seen her like normally and just being this normal teacher throughout all the other routes, and then having that flipped on its head right at the very end of Ayase's route was really impactful and super well done. I also like how he was able to kind of resolve and save himself from the frenzied state in the exact same way that he ended up saving the frenzied, like the principal's daughter in Mayu's story. Like it was the same solution, but he came about it at a roundabout way and didn't actually apply it like they did with Mayu's route, like, which I really liked. I liked how like the two stories had like different kinds of conclusions because they found the solution through different methods, which I think was really cool and very intrinsic to, again, the skill of the writing involved here, because it would have been easy to kind of lean on the same solution for two different routes. Instead, they came across it differently. I also really liked the reveal that Ayase, this is like super well known as this like pop idol type of Astral, who's like the PR representative. She was like recognized for saving people, had this amazing ability. I loved how she was an artificial Astral, and like something that was like mentioned but kind of like went almost under the radar, but something I noticed that was really cool is it made a comment about the drug, how the drug doesn't make you an astral. It doesn't heighten your ability to interact with astrals at all, astrons, particles at all. Like everyone has like a slight ability to do it, but it didn't like miraculously. It didn't miraculously like give you the ability to just interact with astrons. It lets you leech excess Astron control from other astrals around you. So essentially the drug couldn't have worked outside of a city that was essentially like a home territory for astrals, and a school ground specifically filled with astrals. So like she couldn't have used those abilities even with that pill likely outside of the school, which is really funny, just like how intrinsic that is for like the whole like dynamic. It was a really fun little touch they threw in there. So I just really liked that they made her not super like that twist was like, I think it was thoroughly earned and well done. And they even hinted at it a bit when like they were out in the city and Satoru like with the whole date they were on, he was like wondering why she didn't activate her ability. Like I thought it was something about how like she had very limited control, and so I was thinking that she was going to be frenzied. About halfway through, I was worried she was going to end up frenzying eventually. So I was surprised at that. Oh, but there was another twist I thought was really fun. When she revealed she wasn't an astral, I actually thought a different twist was going to come that I think would have been really funny. I'm glad I'm fine with that they didn't do this, but how awesome would it have been if like the lady, because she had the EpiPen of doom that she would that she jabbed Satoru and others with to make them frenzy, and like she was like had one held up to Ayase, and I thought it was gonna be really funny because I thought what was gonna happen was that she was going to be like, and now you'll all perish under her ability, and jab her but stab her like towards the chest and hit her pad and so it wouldn't eject her. If she'd been an actual astral, I have no doubt they would have done that, because how hilarious would it have been if her pad had actually saved her? Like I think that would have been really funny. But I'm fine with what they did. The twist that they did what took me a bit more by surprise, and so I think I got to give her props for that. But I do think like the pad saving her from the jab would have been really funny. But I guess they already did that though with the knife, so maybe it wouldn't have been as good because it would have been a repeat of a joke. But for me, the distance between the events of like the knife attack in the early game and that and Alias's ending was so large for me, I didn't really think about that until just now. But still, would have been really funny. Then we get to the bonus ending, which is really interesting because I remember seeing Chisaki and I was like, oh, she's really cute. I wonder if she's around. And then like it wasn't around. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. So she's just a friend. And then like I was like, when I saw like the after stories, I saw there was another blank spot, and like the implication in the files of the game, not like the core files, but like just like going through the different features of the game, was that Chisaki was around. I was like, why have I not seen how to do this? So I tried to do it on my own, and I just couldn't get it to fire. So I looked it up, and I found there were 2 routes that I hadn't covered. So I'll talk about the Chisaki route, because her route was really sweet. She's just a normal person, and from the get-go, and she's a very adorable, very down-to-earth, but very earnest character, and she was very endearing in that regard. I do think that they kind of pointed out several times, and just because they pointed out doesn't justify that she's kind of the lollybait of the game. Which I was like Ayase was already kind of in that shoe, but Chisaki's definitely in those shoes. But again, she's age appropriate for the character. It doesn't really mean anything, and there are definitely girls that are just smaller, slimmer, and so like I don't think it's about the fetish, it's about having different type of character. What I also liked is like while she was willing to joke about that, it also was a point of like personal like she was self-depreciative, very similar to Hazuki, where she's like a cute girl, but she doesn't see herself like that because she feels inferior. Hazuki's inferiority complex came from just the fact that she held herself to such a high standard, and she often saw the best of others, and so she always felt inferior to them because she saw all her own weaknesses and was very quick to overlook others' weaknesses. Chisaki was the other way around. She was willing to see others' weaknesses and strengths and like helped talk to people about them and was very caring. But she saw her limitations, not having astral powers, and also her body being much more on the small side, and was just like, well, this is just how it is, and kind of was glum about it. And like, but then was able to kind of like, when somebody saw her for who she was rather than how she looked and how she acted, that was something that very much affected her. So that was a very sweet story. the whole like creepy psychic molester guy, I think was well done, because like the twist, the idea that like he was like using his powers to watch how people reacted to his assaults was, I think, something that could be realistic. Realistic in the sense of like people who are going to do terrible things like that, so their motivations can seem alien on the surface but like if you can get into like a mindset of like goals that don't seem aligned with what you typically would like expect, you can help like find the culprit. I think that was really well done for the story. And then their relationship was just very straightforward. Like it was very uncomplicated, very short. But again, it was a bonus route. So like, yeah, it was fine. It was fine. I think Chisaki was a fantastic character, and it was kind of fun to see a relationship route. But it was almost it did feel kind of like an afterthought. And so like, I don't know. I guess I was a bit surprised that was the route that they saved for the unlockable like end game route was a lot more simple. Maybe that's just it though. It was like oh, there's maybe like it would be something I would expect from like a game that was put on Kickstarter, and like one of the stretch goals was like a bonus character. Like that's kind of what it felt like almost. But it was fine. It was very wholesome and very like, I think she was one of the more like she kind of had the clingy tendency that Mayu had that I was kind of like about, but she was a lot more like, I don't know, it was more wholesome for her, I think. So like it was more forgivable. I think Reen Bright, you said Chisaki's route is short but sweet. Absolutely, that's the best way to summarize it. She's definitely the most wholesome of the crew. It is good. So like I don't have any problems with it per se, but I do feel like it could have been more fleshed out. But again, because she's so like sweet and so like wholesome, there just wasn't a whole lot of like dramatic character development that needed to happen, especially because of all the people who like who he could tell like, oh yeah, I have like this secret job that I can't tell you about, but it's really important and you have to trust me on it. It did make sense that she was the one that would roll with it the best. She'd be like, okay, yeah, I get that. Like I even liked her whole like her answer when she's like, I mean, over time it'll hurt, but like I trust you. So yeah, for now we'll leave it at that. And if it becomes a problem, I'll tell you. Like I liked how she is like the queen of communication. Just being able to like share her thoughts and feelings, and even her confession is like she didn't hem and haw like a lot of the other girls did. She was just like, okay, I like him. I'm not going to bottle this up, so I'm just going to tell him. And so she just told him, and I like that a lot. Green Bright, you continue. User stuff loves their bonus routes, so yeah, they always have at least one bonus route hidden until after you complete one main route. Okay, so it's a tradition almost at this point. That makes sense. It makes sense. I'll definitely keep my eye out for it next time. Like, now that I'm kind of like, I've got my foot in the door. Next time I play one of the games, which I absolutely will, I'm definitely they're gonna be on the voting piles a lot from now on. I guarantee you, like at least one of them is gonna be on for the next round. Whatever. It takes time for me to get the game, so who knows when I'll get to it, but I'll definitely get to it. So yeah, and then the final route that I covered is the normal ending, which is hilarious because essentially you dodge all the bullets and you just never like commit enough flag points for any particular girl until after like the festival. And then Satoru, like he has this solo afterthought where like normally like one of the girls like meets up with you and comes to talk with you. It kind of signals what route you're gonna start. But for that one, he's just like, yeah, that was great, that was fun, so I'm gonna dedicate myself to being a good student like my dad wanted me to, and then it just ends. It's just like, and thus he became a student and did student things. That was essentially the ending of the normal ending. I thought that was hilarious. I definitely had to use a guide to get to it though. You pretty much have to just get perfect balance between all the potential routes, which was just, I thought was hilarious to me. So it was a good joke ending. Now we've covered all the routes, so we're getting close to the end. So I'm going to go over what my bests are for like some basic categories of like what I think was the best this, best that, and at the end we're going to do best girl overall, and that's going to be the most decisive one, obviously. And then after that, I'm going to reveal what the next series we're going to cover on Fridays is going to be. So hope you guys are excited for that. Now, best story overall. I hinted at it. It's not going to be too decisive here. ISAs. Now, I think it was heightened because I did her route last, like was recommended online. So like the reveals were really, really well done. But even that, without that, I absolutely agree. Her narrative, the story and the points and the fleshing out of like the paths that are taken, it is by far the superior one when it comes to like events that happen in the game. So it had the betrayal, it had the homeroom teacher the homeroom teacher betrayal, it had the frenzy, like concoction, it had the resolution and the freeing of the president's daughter. Just overall hits all the points really well, does it in a great manner. Was really a lot of fun. So best story, ISA's route. Now, best dates. I also hinted at this previously. That crown goes again to ISA. Now, why do I say this? Best dates is effectively the one where I asked myself, all the dates were great. Like, absolutely every date that you go on with the girls is pretty fun. But I saw myself like what are the dates I see myself, like, personally having the most fun and definitely, like, being the most immersed in? It was the gaming dates with her. Like, just the idea of sitting with her playing, like, essentially, Resident Evil game and having her, like, freaking out and, like, it was so adorable and so wholesome and so just something I could do. Like, it also kind of reminded me of what I think making Let's Plays it all is fun about, like being able to share these experiences. But it also touched on something for me. I think I said it in the like, oh no, I couldn't have said it. I said it to myself. I keep forgetting. You guys weren't there for this. But I went on a mental rant, because I was crazy talking to myself, about how that would be so much fun. Because it reminisces of why I love horror movies. I never watch horror on my own except for very special occasions. I think Train to Busan was like the only one in recent memory that I just sat and watched on my own because I wanted to watch it. But I love watching horror movies because I love watching it with other people. Because I love people's reactions to it. I love, like I still get caught by the jump scares and stuff, but I crack up watching other people laugh. And so, like, it's always been one of my favorite dates ever, because I love having the girl who's there and being like, ah! like just freaking out. Like, I find it so fun. And so, like, ISA's story and like that date, the dates with her where she's like there watching you play the game and like freaking out the whole time, was so much fun for me. I was just like, I want to be there right now. That seems like the best. Irene Bright said, I love ISA storytelling driven games. Those are my favorites too. Yeah. So ISA queen of story and queen of dates. I just think that the dates with ISA were just fantastic. Also, I like how, like, they're very like homebody and very like, it's like ISA actually is an introvert, very similar to like me, where she has no problem standing up in front of crowds and like again, even big crowds, giving public speeches or like saying her opinion. I don't feel comfortable singing. That's because I'm not a good singer. If I were a good singer, I wouldn't have any problem singing in front of people. But she has to like have some solo time to unplug. That's how she unwinds. That's how she recuperates. She's not an extrovert. Like, she might appear she's an introvert, very much like me, which I found very, very like she's a similar spirit in that regard. And so that's why I think her dates resonated with me so much, because when it came to like how she wanted to spend time with her boyfriend or soon to be boyfriend, it was one-on-one in a room watching movies and like playing games. You know, like, that was just how she liked spending her free time. That's how I spend my free time. So I was like, yeah, I can see why a lot of people like her, and I do think that she had the best dates. Now, the best intimacy moments, that we say. The best smexy time. I actually tried to think of like who I would say would be the best. And then in my notes, I just put all. I think they were all great. I think it was interesting because I'm not sure what all Ubisoft games are like. But I found this one was a really helpful and fascinating and wonderful blend of fantasy and reality. Now, obviously, everyone has different experiences with intimacy. Some people haven't experienced it yet. That's perfectly fine. Some people have, and it may be nothing like mine is, and that's also fine. But based on my experience and just like my dating in high school and college and now, like, it all felt fairly real, but not. Let me explain. I feel like a lot of stories and visual novels especially really dramatize the romanticize the first time, the first dates, the first like confessions. I feel like this game was a lot more grounded in that regard, where oftentimes like it's about two people who have no clue what they're doing and are terrified of what the other person's thinking, and trying to figure out how to mingle the way they feel and the passions they feel, and mitigating it with the fear and the unknown and the confusion that comes with trying to like communicate these things without coming across as super creepy to your like partner or even potential partner. Like that is a river of awkward that you have to swim through, especially when you first start out. And I think it was really well displayed because it also highlighted this idea of like girls have sex drives, guys have sex drives. They have different feel, but they're essentially the same, which I really liked. I do think that there was a lot of like reality to it, and I also liked how there really wasn't anything too unreasonable most of the time, and anything that was unreasonable was based on the powers, which I think was really creative. Anyway, so you're saying ISA's first H scene is my favorite of all time because of how caring Satoru is for ISA's fears. Yes. Like there's so ISA's, like, you're absolutely right. I think Satoru in general, I think he was very good about being like a reasonable like partner who mostly listened to his partners in a very healthy manner, which I think is good. I think it's good when good habits are put up in relationship based games. Ayase also had the intimacy moment that I liked the least, which was towards the end, when it was the last one, when he goes all hog wild on her and like she like yells at him at the end for saying like, hey, I told you to stop and you didn't stop. Like, I was like, yeah, that was pretty messed up, dude. Like, you need to calm down. But he apologized, so as long as it wasn't a problem. Yeah. You see, we're on the same page here, Reen Bright. Like, her last H, like he said, your last H scene and her main route was the least favorite, even if they used the excuse of drugs. Exactly. Like, it was not okay what went down there, and you got to be careful with that. I'm glad they called it out, and she was very forgiving. But I still think I personally didn't like that. I personally think it was a bit far and too fantasy and too disregarding of personal feelings, which I'm not a huge fan of. But again, it's fantasy, so like I'll give it props. But yeah, like ISA had one of the best and one of the worst. Let's see. I'll go down. I gotta go down the list. So Hazuki, I loved how Hazuki was a prim and proper person who absolutely had a sex drive, and her biggest like how she constantly battled it. I thought it was really hilarious how she absolutely had one of the like most driven sex drives of all the girls, but she also was the one who was most disturbed by that. Like, so she freaked herself out, and I thought that was really funny and really well done as a character development. And how she did, like, she was willing to, like, let herself go, but, like, how afterwards she'd be, like, ashamed of herself. Like, you shouldn't feel shame for intimacy, but I understand why she did, because, again, I think a lot of similar ways to Hazuki. Whoever wrote Hazuki must be a similar person to, or know someone very similar to me in personality, because, like, they nailed it, of just, like, trying to walk that line between like having very intense like desires, but then having that post clarity where you kind of look at yourself and you're like, oh gosh, like am I okay? Like, you are okay, but like part of you has to be like, am I? And you almost need that like reassurance from your partner to like I didn't do anything regrettable, right? Like it's such a mood and such a real thing. Again, that's why I felt like it was so real, because like it very much was inside with me. Nanami, I think, here's the thing. So Nanami was the one I was most uncomfortable with as a dating partner, but I think Nanami's romantic intercourse scenes were actually the most stimulating. I'll get to some of that again in a later kind of like prize I hand out, but I also think that it was, again, that kind of thing where she was like a soft sadist Like, it was like just the right level of like self-determination and like and being like this is what we're doing, this is what you should do to me, this is what I'm going to do to you. I found that very appealing. Something I personally just find very appealing, but like not in the whole like S&M type of thing. Like, that was the reason why I liked it so much, is because it didn't take it that far. It was very down to earth and very realistic, and just something I found very interesting. And so a lot of the intimacy scenes, the reason why it was hard to pick favorites is because whilst it gets shaken up between them, essentially everyone goes through the same intimacy scenes with Satoru, almost like when it comes to positions and conversations and interactions, it's essentially all kind of the same, just in different orders. Like, they kind of touch on all the various aspects and positions and such, and that's fine. That's why it's hard to pick favorites, because essentially once you go through all the routes, you essentially see all the same ones, just presented in slightly different ways. So again, hard to pick favorites. So Nanami, I think, had the best bedroom interaction. Mayu, she definitely, I think, whoever does character designer, I think had a type, and I think that type was Mayu. I think she got a little more TLC in her artwork and the intimacy moments. I think all of them had like a lot of TLC, but I felt like for some reason hers were a lot more intense, in the sense that like the writer was well driven. Glasses or no glasses? I checked both. I picked glasses. Glasses was my favorite. Like I said, there's hints that Mayu had like whoever was writing and like doing like the intimacy parts. I think they had a personal favorite in Mayu. Like, you could kind of feel it a little bit in the writing. Maybe that's just me. No problem with that. I do think it was very well done. I think that there was a lot like the intimacy moments with her, and also like I think just the dating moments with her were some of the best. It was kind of the in between that rubbed me the wrong way with her. Like, she would be so like weirdly flirty. I think part of why it gave me a bad taste in my mouth is that like the way she would flirt reminded me of a girl that I did kind of, I say quote unquote date, because what happened is that we had a bit of a fling relationship, escalated really quickly. Was great fun until her boyfriend called and yelled at me, because it turned out I became the side guy. She never told me that I was a side guy. So like, I knew there was a guy, there were a lot of guys. For this girl, she was very much well liked. She was very pretty, and because of that, she had kind of a following, and she knew how to flirt. She was very flirty. And so a lot of guys fell for her and followed her around and like were constantly like interested in a relationship with her. But she usually just kind of played along and never really like got serious. And so when she and I got serious, like, I just thought she pulled the trigger on me, you know, like we were going to do this. But then it turned out she'd also been dating another guy and didn't tell me and didn't tell him. And then he found out through the grapevine. And so he then called and yelled at me. And so then I called her and was like, what the fetch? Like, what is this? Is this real? Like, is this what's happening? And she like confessed, like, yeah, I was dating him for a few weeks, but like, I didn't find him, like, she's like, I had problems with him, but I didn't feel like she felt too shy to break up with him because he was head over heels for her. And so then she tried to like do stuff with me. It was a mess. And so I think, but her personality and the way she flirted was very similar to Mayu's. So maybe I'm biased in that regard. Still, so very well loved, very well done. Chisaki, again, she's wholesome, she's very sweet. They played up the wholesomeness with her first intimacy scene, which was fine. Again, I worry that she's kind of like I think she's kind of like meant to be the lolly bait, and that makes me uncomfortable. But because it's it can be a real thing, like, and the age appropriateness is there, like, it's fine. Like, I don't really have an issue with it. I just worry that it's playing on the interests of people who do take things too far. But, you know, to each their own. It's all fake anyway, so there's a limited amount of like judgment that should be going down there. But All the same, I personally find it a little too like the true like lolly H stuff is it's too much. It makes me uncomfortable, so I tend to stay away from it. And so like that was my big worry, but I think it was fairly tasteful in this series. And again, like the age appropriateness is there for this game, so like it's fine. Again, it's very wholesome otherwise, like just very sweet in general. Very good. So yeah, all the intimacy scenes, they're all great. They're all great. Again, they got a little samey, but it's fine. Like it was really well done. All right, now character design. God, I'm getting repetitive here. Best character design, ISA. Just her look, her outfits, and her like the posing and the facial expressions, just on par, fantastic. I think she did get a little more TLC in the character design. Again, she's kind of main girly, so like there's a lot more, I think, dynamic like character moments with her and her expressions. So like I have to give the like props to the fact that she was just super well done by the designers. Just beautiful in every way. By the way, whoever does the art for Ubisoft, like I wish I could contact them. I would love to do a commission with them. I doubt I could afford them, and I'm sure they're busy doing other like way cooler professional stuff. But man, how cool would it be to be able to have like my OCs and myself like done in this style? It'd be so fun. I'd love it. I'd love it so much. Maybe someday. Maybe someday. I get a little jealous. I used to watch. I don't follow him as much, but I used to watch Noble, like Lost Pause. I just fell off the wagon with his content recently, but like still love the guy. But I was so jealous when he got like the people, like he used to cover visual novels, and he covered the very like ecchi games that were, I can't even remember what they're called or the series particularly, but like it always involved like fox girls, cat girls, and like was very prerogative the entire time. And like the artist who worked on those games actually did a professional like they designed his like mascot character Lily for him in that art style, and I've always been super jealous of that. I was like, dang it, how cool would that be if that happened to me someday? It was like, oh, it'd be amazing. So like I've always hoped that like I might feel like I've officially made it as a like visual novel YouTuber if I ever like get a proposition like that someday from the art directors. And my top picks for art designers, character designers, would be probably Ubisoft or Anchor from the Muv-Luv series. Like both of them, I think, have some of the best character designs I've seen when it comes to a balance of characters' look, hair, and eyes, and outfits in general. Just beautiful overall. And so of all the designs, they all were really good, but I think ISA's, she got the most love, I think, and I just think her designs are great. So she gets best character design. Best voice, Nanami. Here's the thing. I think that the voice actor for Nanami hit it out of the park. It was fantastic, especially in the bedroom scenes. I think the intimacy scenes can get a little like over the top, especially with surround sound headphones. I'll tell you. Oh boy, that was getting me up to misbehave, I'll tell you. But Nanami's was the best. It was just like almost ASMR, kind of like just so pleasant on the ears. I also think she conveyed emotion really, really well. All of them did a pretty good job, but a lot of them kind of would be a bit too anime, I guess you'd say. Like it was like an act, like so much an act. Hazuki was probably the next best, but again, it had that element of just being very forcefully acted. For some reason, Nanami's came across a lot more natural. It was still very anime, but like it came across a lot more down to earth, I would say. So like best voice and best voice actor goes to like whoever voiced Nanami. Just beautifully done. Again, all the girls had great voice actors, don't get me wrong. They were fantastic, and I'm sure I'll hear them again in other Ubisoft games, because I'm sure they each repeatedly are reprised just because they're so skillful. But if I had to pick one, Nanami gets the crown, just because I think she does like one of the best voice ranges. So it was really, really good. And then best personality. Here's where it's going to get a bit decisive, but I think the best personality has to go to Hazuki. Again, I'm biased because I see a lot of myself in her, but I also feel like she has the most complicated and most dynamic personality. All the girls did a great job of not being tropes. Like, they're introduced with the tropey kind of style, and they have a tropey premise for each of them. But as you got to know them, they evolved into much more complicated characters. But I think Hazuki's personality was just the best because she was, I think, the best developed and had the most growth during her character arc, but also stayed very true to herself, which I think is really important. Like, characters shouldn't do 180s, but they also should grow. And she did a perfect job of that as a character. She was so well written with personality that, like, you could predict how she would respond to certain situations, but you couldn't predict other ways. And so that made her really dynamic to me. And so I think she had, like, the best personality. So that's pretty much everything I have to say about it, other than the fact is, out of all these girls, who was best girl? Yeah, that's an interesting question. First of all, I gotta say, I think all of them were great. I definitely think, like, my least favorite, like I said, was Mayu, but that's not to say that she's not one of my least. She's far from a least favorite character of all visual novels I've read, by far. Like, she's fantastic. Like, the worst in Riddle Joker is still a superior character to most games I play. Visual novels are always batting pretty good for character development, so like it's almost not fair comparing visual novels to normal games. But, like, don't think that because she's my least favorite that she's at all, like, bad. She's fantastic. But best girl of Riddle Joker, according to TheBlueShifting, is Hazuki. Is that a surprise? It's not a surprise, right? I said it many times, but even after playing every single route, I still have to give it to Hazuki. Like, if there's one character I'm like, I see myself having a lot of fun spending time with, being able to, like, get to know, I can see myself genuinely in a relationship with, if I were literally in the right age category and, like, literally going to that school and literally, like, amongst these people, who would I be the most interested in? Who would I have the most fun spending time with? Who would I have the best time in a relationship with? It would be Hazuki, hands down. ISA's pretty up there, but she has her crazy moments that, like, are, like, they're fun for a story, but, like, it'd be hard to genuinely be in a relationship with ISA sometimes. Like, obviously, she blows things out of proportion, and it's nice because, like, she's not crazy. She just would be a handful. And whilst she and I think ISA would be the most fun to date strictly, Hazuki just has it all. And I mean, come on. It is something to be said that of all the people who had epilogues, Hazuki's had the most distant epilogue that heralded the most, like, long-term actual relationship implication. Granted, it's fictional. I'm sure Satoru could easily have spent the rest of his life with all of these girls. Hands down, easily. But Hazuki, her epilogue was, like, a few years later, when she's a police officer, and he's, like, still working for the TSA or whatever it's called, and they're, like, gonna move in together. Like, it really felt like they had, like, an actual relationship. And that's always a big thing for me. Like, I always approach these like, who could I feel like I have an actual relationship with? It'd be Hazuki. I do see Reen Bright, best girl equals ISA. I think a lot of people think that, and I agree. Like, ISA's great, and I'm gonna be, like, attacked for this because most people, I think, really liked ISA. She's kind of got that, like, main girl route. But here's the thing: I also tend to not fall for the main girls. It's a thing. I don't know. Like, I just got a type, and it tends to be the not main girl. It tends to be, like, next best girl. I don't know why. But yeah, Hazuki won the crown for me. Even after all was said and done, going through all the endings, Hazuki reigned supreme, for my opinion. I think all the girls were fantastic, and I can see everyone having a completely different favorite girl, and we could all agree that they are fantastic. So that is my rundown of this game. Wonderful rom-com, fantastically written. Again, one of the best things about rom-coms that I think can happen is when they go beyond just the initial becoming boyfriend-girlfriend and explore an actual relationship, and this game does that beautifully. It doesn't have the most dynamic choices, but that's okay. I feel like Ace Academy still reigns supreme when it comes to impactful character decision making, especially with the timed decisions. I want to see that come back in the game someday. If I ever make a visual novel, I want that to be a feature in it if it has branching narratives. Like if it's a branching rom-com type of game, it absolutely is going to have timers because I loved that stuff. But for a game that lets you really explore character development, for a game that like lets you immerse yourself in a like pseudo sci-fi world, it was wonderful. I had just enough sci-fi to keep me engaged. I had just enough romance to keep me like committed. Had just enough comedy to get me cracking up almost every episode. Overall, it was a fantastic game. And what scares me is that I had so much fun with this, and apparently it's one of Ubisoft's weaker titles. A lot like this game. You want to know how unknown this game is online technically? Most of the time when I do these games, I can post the game's name in the description. Like there's a section where it'll like highlight, like you could put down the exact game you're playing, and it'll kind of put a direct link to it and other games, other channels that feature that game in some way. Most games I've played, even lesser known ones, pop up when you type it in there, like it's a game that they feature, that they have links to pages. This game doesn't even pop up. I tried my best to get it to pop up. It wouldn't pop up. As far as YouTube is concerned, this game doesn't exist, which is terribly sad. But again, like based on what I've heard, part of the reason why I probably was given this game by Ubisoft for free so long ago was because it probably didn't do as well. Like it just didn't. It released and the fanfare just wasn't there, and the fans probably just kind of were meh, probably saying like I'm guessing it's because like it might be one of the weaker titles, and that's awesome because if this is a weak title, I am freaking stoked to see what Ubisoft has in store for me. Holy cow, like that's going to be amazing. So I have a lot to look forward to. But yeah, sadly this time put this away, and unfortunately Ubisoft games I don't think fit for my Friday selection very often. Maybe patrons will force it through someday if we do another Ubisoft here, but like I just don't think it fits. I think they're too high quality. I think they're too well known. I think it's a game. I think it's dangerous to constantly chase like well-known titles on the channel. Like priority is going to go to stuff that's well known, but I also want to make sure there's always a spot on the channel for stuff that's newer, not as well known, smaller developers. Like I want there to be spots for my channel to cover titles that just don't often get the spotlight. I have so many small developers now that reach out to me to have have games featured on the channel. And sometimes there are games that genuinely come through that I'm like, I really don't think I want to cover this. Like either it's too basic or the art style just doesn't vibe with me, or just it doesn't sound like an appealing like pitch to me. And like that's the sad thing, is like there's a good amount of them that I can't really say yes to. But I still want to say yes to as many of them as I can. I want to give a voice to people and developers that don't get as much of a voice. And I want to cover games that are newer that might not have the traction yet that they deserve. And I think Riddle Joker does fit that category. No, it's not a small developer. No, it's not a small channel, small type of content. But I think Riddle Joker got a bad rap for Ubisoft, and so that's why I do think it still is a fit for this slot. Reen Bright, Sonobu Witch, and Sabat of the Witch are considered Ubisoft's masterpiece. Okay, yeah, I've definitely heard of Sabat of the Witch, but again, I'm so green to visual novels. Like I said, like the first thing I covered on this channel was Sound of Drop Fall into Poison. It was the first video I uploaded. It was a visual novel. It was probably the second visual novel I ever like read, and the first one was a Let's Play that I followed on YouTube with the Anime Man, and he played one, and I got sucked into it, and I was like, "This is the coolest thing! Like these games are so exactly what I've always wanted in my life. Why have I never known about this?" And then I started like looking into it a bit, and I was like, "Holy cow! Like this is like the best thing! I can't believe I didn't know these were things." And so then he started playing Sound of Drop, and the premise really caught me, and I was like, you know what, I'm not going to watch this. I want to play it myself. So I bought it, and I was like, you know what, I need a hobby, because I just moved, I had nothing going on, so I was like, I need a hobby. So I started recording, and that's what the start of my YouTube channel was. So the only visual novels that I have like not read, oh, I gotta turn it down again. Like you see every visual novel I've read pretty much on this channel. And that's the best part. That's why a game like this can completely blindside me, because despite the fact that Ubisoft is so well known in the community, I had no idea who they really were, because I'm so like green to all this still. And I love that. I love that I can play these games and give you the absolute first impressions from me. It makes it so fun. It definitely means it's hard for me to call myself an expert on visual novels, because I'm like the stupidest expert on visual novels ever. I understand writing. I know character development. I love these things, and I love how visual novels cover them, and I think they're so fun. But because I go through them so slowly on my channel, it's going to take me years to actually be on par with a lot of you, and that's perfectly fine for me. I just think it's really fun. So, it's been a great trip. I'm really sad to say goodbye to Riddle Joker, but I'm excited to be able to read Ubisoft in the future. Ubisoft's material in the future. Whilst we have to say goodbye to this fantastic series, we have another thing on the horizon, and it's kind of nice that we're having like this like intro being played right now, because after this I'm going to actually stop it and we're going to jump over and I'm going to play a trailer for the next thing that we start next Friday on the channel. So we're going to do that right now. Well, in a few seconds. There you go, Riddle Joker. Farewell, Riddle Joker. We need to get you on SEMEE game, the most absurd comedy VNs out there. If only Making Lovers had won the vote a few months back. Yep, I definitely I really like the premise of Making Lovers. Like, I'm all for it. That looked fantastic. I put it on the vote because I was like secretly kind of hoping it would win, but it didn't win. It'll win eventually. It'll keep bidding on the vote because Making Lovers sounds like right up my alley. But here is what we're going to be playing next.
You usually play as the hero. You could be this guy, killing this guy. But not this time. You're this guy. Feel the pain of being a squire.
Hang on. It's not showing for some reason. Come on. It's like, this should take priority, game. Like, why is it not taking priority? There we go. Okay, we'll do it again. Live.
You could be this guy, killing this guy. But not this time. You're this guy. Feel the pain of being a squire, trying to keep his night alive. You're also a nobody, so it's time to get good.
Whoa, nice. You're pretty cool. Living like fictions abound. What can I do for you? Thanks. This looks neat.
And finally unleash your full potential. You're no hero, but one day this could be you.
Yep, that clumsy showing. The winner of the vote on Patreon was Love Esquire. It's going to be interesting. It's actually a management game, so it's going to be featuring more gameplay. It'll be interesting. I haven't been able to cover a management game on the channel yet. Not truly. I guess the closest would have been Sunrider series, which I really loved. But yeah, this one's going to be very rom-com-y for sure. But it's also going to be management. So we're going to see. Maybe my first ending is going to be terrible. Who knows? But it looks very cute. It's funny because like one of the things that's really fun about this is that I was contacted by this developer before they even released the game. They gave me a copy of the game and they gave me a demo. And back then, the live stuff I was experimenting with was demos. And so I did a demo of it and it was pretty fun. I actually was really interested in it. I thought it was really well done. But I also could kind of tell that the full game was going to probably be something I'd need to be able to edit. So I said, you know what? When it's fully released, I'll try and get it on the channel. And it's finally time. Love Esquire is going to be fun. I have no idea what to expect except for the fact that it's like very full of puns and just ridiculousness. So yeah, I'm excited for that. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Thank you so much for those of you who attended live. Reen Bright, it was great reading your comments. Thank you so much. For those of you who are watching in post, I hopefully will catch your comments there as well. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown. I tried to be really thorough. I tried to cover all the routes and kind of like what my thoughts were on them. I don't want you to feel like I left anyone out in the dust, but if you have any follow-up questions, I'll happily answer them. Again, the downside is that sometimes I don't get notifications as well when on the upload of a live stream, but just do your best. And if anything, you can always ask me questions on the Discord. I'll be archiving the chat log for Riddle Joker, but you can always post there, and I usually see those. So if you post something there, or you want to post a meme or an announcement that's related to that game, like I go to the archive, I usually check up on those. So like it's a good place to have a I archive them because I want to be able to talk about these games after I finish playing them. It makes the Discord a mess, but it's a good place to chat. So it's really cool to be able to do. But yeah, thank you guys so much for being here, for listening to me ramble. One of my favorite things about this channel is the fact that you actually listen to me ramble. Not sure why sometimes, but I'm really grateful to have you here. Irene Bright, thanks for the stream. It's nice hearing your insights in the game. Thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate you showing up. Like, live streams are definitely not my cup of tea. They're not super common, and I definitely think I don't think gameplay works very well, at least with my computer. If I had a second PC, I bet you we could do live gameplay really well, but that's not the case. And I also like editing videos anyway, so it's not really a big thing for me. But I love being able to have the live interaction and be able to kind of bounce back and forth with stuff, so thank you for attending. But yeah, hope you guys have a great rest of your day and a great start to the next week. I will give a heads up. If you're still listening to this and you're interested, keep in mind, someone just got a real nasty cold at my house. I'm going to do my best, but I always feel like it's inevitable. And unfortunately, it's another one of those like throat colds. So if I do get it, I might have to take a break, but them's the breaks. That's how it goes. So anyway, hope you guys have a great rest of your night. And until next video, watching me, ever see me in next. I'll see you there. Bye, guys.